You didn't say anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. But somehow, the room shifted the moment you walked in. The coworker who gets defensive before you even finish your sentence? The friend who admits months later, I was honestly intimidated by you at first. The stranger at the party who avoids your eye contact all night, then leaves early. And you're standing there thinking, what am I doing that's making people react this way? Here's what nobody tells you. It's not what you're doing. It's what you are. And most people don't have the language for it yet. There are 7 specific signs this is happening to you. Psychological patterns with real names. Social triggers you've been living with but never understood. And once you see them clearly, everything starts to make sense. The loneliness, the misreadings, all of it. Let's get into it. Sign 1. Silence doesn't scare you, but it terrifies everyone else. Most people treat silence like an emergency. They'll fill it with anything: weather, weekend plans, a random comment about the music playing, anything to keep the air moving. You don't. You wait. You sit in it. And that alone makes people squirm. Researchers at the University of Groningen found that just 4 seconds of silence in a conversation is enough to spike most people's heart rates. They feel judged. They feel exposed. They scramble to fill the gap. But you're not judging them. You're just not performing. You're not using words as social glue to manage the room. You're not talking to prove you belong. And in a world where most people are constantly performing comfort for each other, your stillness reads as power. What they can't control, they fear. So they'll laugh nervously, call you intense, tell someone later you're hard to read. What they actually mean is, I couldn't get a read on you, and that made me feel like the less powerful one in the room. That's not your problem to fix. Sign 2. People tell you things they've never told anyone. You're not a therapist. You didn't ask. But within 20 minutes of meeting you, a stranger is telling you about their divorce. A coworker is opening up about his fear of failing his kids. The barista mentions something heavy, almost like she forgot you just met. This isn't random, and it's not luck. Psychologist Carl Rogers called it unconditional positive regard, the rare ability to be fully present with someone without an agenda, without waiting for your turn to talk, without quietly planning how you'll respond. Most people listen to reply. You listen to understand. People feel that difference, even when they can't name it. Your attention is so complete, so unguarded, that being around you feels like finally exhaling. And in a world where most conversations are just 2 people waiting to speak, that kind of presence is magnetic. But here's the part that stings. After they open up, many of them pull away. You'll see it happen in real time. Their face changes. They suddenly remember somewhere they need to be. And the next week, they won't quite meet your eyes. You didn't do anything wrong. You witnessed them. And for a lot of people, being truly seen is more uncomfortable than being invisible. They shared something real, and now they feel exposed not because of you, but because of themselves. You're not too much. They just weren't ready for that level of honesty. Sign 3. You've been told you think too much. Someone asks your take on something simple. You pause. You actually think about it. You start to share something genuine. And before you finish, why do you always have to analyze everything? It's not that deep. That sentence isn't an observation. It's a complaint in disguise. What it actually means is, your depth made me aware of my own shallowness, and I didn't like how that felt. Research in social psychology confirms this. People are most comfortable around others who match their cognitive style, meaning how deeply they think. When you naturally process things at a different level, your presence becomes a mirror. And most people don't like what they see in it. So they minimize you, tell you to relax, say you're overthinking it. But you're not overthinking. You're just thinking. And in a culture that rewards quick, takes over careful ones, that's enough to make people uncomfortable. You think too much almost always means your thinking reminds me I'm not thinking enough. They're annoyed not at you, but at what you reflect back to them. Sign 4. The room is different when you leave. You don't dominate conversations. You're not loud. Sometimes you barely speak at all. But when you're not there, people notice. Your friends tell you later, it wasn't the same without you. Your coworkers move through the meeting differently when you're absent. The group chat gets louder and somehow emptier at the same time. Here's the strange part. You don't run anything. You don't control anything. But when you're present, people behave differently. They're a little more honest, a little more careful. The gossip gets quieter. The pettiness pulls back. Not because you said anything, just because you were there. Research on group dynamics shows that even one calm, observant person in a room shifts how the whole group operates. Everyone becomes more self-aware, more considered, without a single word. And the irony? You're probably the only one in the room who doesn't realize this is happening. You're wondering if you talked enough, if you contributed, if you even belonged. Meanwhile, everyone else is adjusting around you. Sign 5. People get defensive when you haven't accused them of anything. You make a neutral observation. You ask one clarifying question. Suddenly, the other person is explaining themselves, justifying a choice you never challenged, getting worked up about something you never questioned. You say, "Oh, you're still doing that job?" And they immediately launch into why it's actually a great opportunity and the money is fine and they know what they're doing. You didn't say anything. You just asked. But your attention has weight. And when someone who is truly observant pays attention to you, you become aware suddenly, uncomfortably aware that they might see things you don't want seen. That's what's happening. Their defensiveness isn't about what you said. It's about what they're afraid you noticed. Research on social evaluation backs this up. People become significantly more self-conscious around those they perceive as genuinely perceptive. Your calm attention reads like scrutiny, even when it's just curiosity. You're not interrogating them, but they feel interrogated. And that gap between your intent and their experience of it is one of the loneliest parts of being who you are. Sign 6. You'd rather understand than win. Someone says something you don't agree with. Most people immediately start building their counterargument, waiting for the right moment to correct. You ask questions instead. You want to understand how they got there, why they see it that way, what they're actually saying underneath the surface. And this refusal to turn every conversation into a competition deeply unsettles people who treat disagreement like combat. When you don't take the bait, they don't know what to do with you. When you ask, "Why do you think that?" instead of "You're wrong," they sometimes take it as an attack. Because to them, curiosity feels like challenge. Openness feels like a trap. You've lost friendships over this. Not because you were cruel, because you wouldn't just agree, because you took their ideas seriously enough to actually examine them, and they wanted validation, not a real conversation. They'll say, "You always have to be different," that you're playing devil's advocate. What they mean is, "You refuse to let me stay comfortable in something I never actually examined, and I resent you for it." Here's the distinction that matters, though, and this is something the comments on videos like this always ask about. There's a real difference between someone who questions everything from a place of genuine curiosity and someone who questions everything to feel superior. The first makes people think. The second makes people feel small. If you're watching this, you already know which one you are. Sign 7. You see what everyone else is pretending not to see. The tension in the room nobody's acknowledging. The contradiction in what someone just said. The pattern that's been repeating for 6 months that everyone keeps tiptoeing around. You see it. You've always seen it. And even when you say nothing, they know. They feel your awareness. And that's enough to make them uncomfortable. Not because you're judging. Because now they can't pretend it isn't there anymore. Your presence makes performance harder. And for people who have been performing their whole lives, that feels like a threat. You're not intimidating because you're loud or aggressive or dominant. You're intimidating because you're real. Present in spaces built for distraction. Honest in rooms built for small talk. And when people who've gotten very comfortable with performance suddenly encounter something genuine, their first instinct is to retreat or to make you feel like you're the problem. Here's what it actually costs to be like this. People will call you intimidating when they mean, "You make me uncomfortable with myself." They'll say you're too intense when they mean, "You ask for more than I'm willing to give." Some of it is fear. A lot of it is jealousy. They wish they could sit in silence without panic, be alone without anxiety, think before they speak. But instead of growing toward it, they pull away from you. And that leaves you in a particular kind of loneliness. Not the kind where no one's around. The kind where you're in a full room and still feel unseen. Watching people bond easily over things that feel hollow to you. Wondering if you should try harder to be lighter, easier, less. You shouldn't. Because here's what's also true. There are people out there who will meet you and immediately feel like they can breathe. Who won't need you to perform or shrink. Who will match your silence with their own? Meet your depth with curiosity instead of discomfort. Look at the same thing you're looking at and say, yeah, I see it too. They're not the majority, but they're real. And they're looking for exactly what you are. The question was never whether you should change. It was whether you're willing to stay exactly who you are while you wait for them to find you. If one of these signs hit close to home, drop it in the comments. Which one felt most like you?